getting started a little. That's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to listen to yourself breathe into a microphone. Okay, anyway. Let's see what we got going on here. So I installed VisualVM. Gotta exit out some things. So the issue we're trying to deal with is if, like you see, it's going to be interesting because my CPU is going to be high anyway because of the streaming. But right now, we're hovering right around 20%, I guess. 16, 17. If we start the server up, well, let me go over how you start a server first. Let's make a zip. Somebody might be interested because the standalone server is available on the. So I can do that so I can see the trap. Standalone server is available for download for anybody who wants to run their own server that doesn't require the UI and stuff. And it comes in a zip file. It looks like that. I'm going to use jar. You can use if you have something that can unzip. You can use that. So I'm going to unzip it. And in there you can go into the bin directory, and there's various batch files for whatever Java you're running. In my case, I'm on Windows, so I'm going to use the Mythruna server.bat. If you just run it without anything, it will tell you, oh, you need to do something. You either need to specify -init or give it a server name. And so if you do -init, it'll make a config file for you. And if we check, oh, I should have given it a name, right? -init demo world or demo server. Okay, so it made a demo server.config file. If we look at that, that lets me, configure where I've got my worlds directory set up, which defaults to where your single player game would put them. And the worlds directory, you can just leave those the same. And if you want to run one of your single player worlds, you'd put that world dir name in there, which is basically same as your server name. I think you should have a anyway. Like if you were to look in the users psp.mythruna2 worlds, basically demo world or hello world, basically you put this value in where demo server is, and then you'd run again, only instead of specifying the -init, you just use the demo server config. If I try to run this now, it's going to tell me that world doesn't exist, I think. Something like that. Anyway, that's how you start it, and I've already got one set up for when I develop. So that's my test config here. Yeah, so you see it's got the demo world, which is the same one I use to test single player stuff. And because I'm running in my build environment, it's basically passing the arguments. Yeah, so you leave the .server config off and just pass test anyway. So we're going to run the server. Looks like this. Well, yours wouldn't have all the Gradle stuff. Starts up the server with the copious debug logging. And once up, you can run commands. Yours will look better because it won't have all the Gradle stuff. But so anyway, from there we should be able to run VisualVM. Well, let's look at the CPU usage while we're here. So we see that, yeah, now my CPU usage is about 34%. So even though it's hopping from CPU to CPU, if you figure out this is about 2/3. So I've got 6 CPUs. one of them is being used for streaming, essentially hopping around, and the other one's being used to run the server. And since the server's not doing anything and not handling any connections, it shouldn't be running physics. I mean, all that stuff is running, but nothing is happening. It's concerning that it's taking up essentially a full CPU's worth of processing. Obviously I haven't tried to run it on a single CPU system. But anyway, so I thought, I had not poked VisualVM at it. I thought maybe we would all like to go along for the journey. And I have not run VisualVM or from a fresh install in a long time. But of course it would. And so I don't remember what the specific tricks are and why. I think if I remember correctly, it's related to, okay, somehow VisualVM is still running even though I shut it down. There's this, so JPS doesn't show any processes, which means something about a permission on a user directory somewhere. This is like vague recollection. Crap, I probably should have tried to at least point it to the server at least once. But these are the problems you might run into if you're trying to start this. So you can do VisualVM won't find my process. Doesn't list certain Java processes. Okay, so let's see what Stack Overflow has to say. That is not it. When I did this before, it was because of a permission issue. They're all saying the same thing, basically. And I'm a little concerned to start trying to poke around my... I mean, we can go straight to the actual docs. No, that's not it. Error, try this one. Yeah. So let's look for that. That's what I remember from before. What are they saying? They're saying temp. But I don't think that's the case. What is it on? Yeah. Okay, so let's check that out. Local temp. App data. Oh my gosh. Boy, the temp directory is always fun. So apparently it cannot access Either the JVM can't. You know what? Let's exit the server. Let us try what the other thing suggested. Hold on, let me just close some of this crap. Alright, let's say run as administrator. Yes, I want to run as administrator. Okay. So and then let's try running this. Server start up. Make sure it's really started. All right. See if JPS. Yes. Okay. So that's what it is. It's a permissions issue, and I have no idea how to set that on Windows. So that will work for you if you have to do that. There's a way. Yep. Still using Windows 7. And I'm a long-time Firefox user. Since Netscape back in the day. I mean, was a time when it was Mosaic or Netscape on the Sun workstations I used to work on. Okay, so and yeah, Windows 7 I had I had bought licenses for that and didn't feel like buying new licenses, though they're gonna make me soon. All right. Alright, so we're going to connect to one of these. Should be able to say open. The server is running. Let's confirm that we've still got high CPU. Yep. Alright, VisualVM, what are you doing? I said open and nothing happened. I'm going to close some folders. Sometimes my folders don't refresh since it's a driver update. Alright, let's try this again. Huh. Yeah, nothing is happening. I have no idea what JFR is. Let's try profile. Huh. It's a short trip. Alright, where's our window? That's not helpful. Can we pretend to... Yeah. Can we open the Gradle? Ah, so you will let me connect to Gradle. I wonder if that's because you're running... Okay, let's try... Close you down. Let's try running the server the way it was meant to be run. Let's copy that over to where I was running before. No distributions. Whoops. Alright, so we ought to be able to say server and then test. So now to be running like any Java application. It's funny, I didn't expect us to have, yes, this is the way it would look if you ran it. Because it doesn't have a UI yet. Okay, let's try VisualVM again. Alright, so we got one less thing showing up. Let's see. Will you let me connect now? Aha! So Gradle must have been blocking access to the process that it started. We don't need to start page. Okay, so it's telling me all the overview stuff. What we want to do, sometimes you can learn a little bit by the threads that are running. But this is not showing detailed information about individual threads. So there's two kinds of profiling usually. Oh. Interesting. Okay, so that's interesting. So add JMX connection. Oh. Maybe the server server does not have profiling available. That's going to make this difficult. Nope. Yeah, they don't let me view the log file from here. Nope, about. Oh, maybe they do. Oh, they do. Okay. So what do we got? Access is denied. What version of Java are we running? Okay, let's try again. I'm going to see what version this is running over here. No, it should be fine. You know, I've never done this on Java 18 before. Wonder if we can run as just do Java 1.8 and see if that will work. And in that case, we have to run through to Java 8 test. See if it'll work. Have not tried to run the server on Java 8 before. Seems to work okay. it's running. You know, one thing we could have done was connect to it to make sure it's working. In fact, let's just confirm that we can connect. Regular style. Join multiplayer local hosts. That should work. Yep. Did I do test? Okay. I'll just create a new account. User ID test. Okay. Well then, we will try to log in as test. Ta-da! Well, I mean, clearly we can connect to the server, so it's oh yeah. I'm in the process of working on some stuff that I might have broken client server in my build. So, you know what? Let's run another as administrator. I feel unclean running all these things as administrator. Oh, thanks. That's available. That one is in the release from last week, which is up for anybody who's requested access. Which anybody who wants it can get it. Just have to ask. Okay, which Java version am I running here? Okay, let's back to Alright, let's try this now. Will you work now? Sampler. Available, yes! So dropping back to Java 8 seems to fix that problem. So as I was going to say before, there's kind of two kinds of CPU profiling. One is what they call sampling, which is the easiest to do, which is basically it pulls all of the threads that are running and says, what are you doing now? 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 And it keeps track of how many times it asked and it said the same thing. And there's the other kind where it instruments the code and it knows every method call starts and stops. Super accurate, slows everything down while it's running. And if you have a really large code base, it can take a long time to instrument all that code. We don't care. We just want to get a kind of a picture of where the CPU time is going. So we're going to do some CPU sampling. We let it run for a little while. It's telling us who's busy, who's taking all the time. So far it's the UDP host and main, and yeah, pretty much those are the guys that are climbing all the time. 100%, 100%. Oh, we've got... Yeah, the database timer thread. Yeah. So I suspect one of my idle threads is spinning out of control. Oh yeah, you know, I think there's been talk about this in the game loop thread. Tends to run. Yeah, this is not useful, is it? Yeah, that's kind of ironic. This is cranking up all kinds of time because the main method is waiting on readline. So again, this is not accurate because that's not actually doing any work. We're kind of blocked there. And Same with on the UDP, we're just going to be blocked waiting on receive. So these aren't really telling us anything useful. Just we're sampling and we're saying, yep, we're still in receive, we're still in receive, we're still in receive, we're still in receive. There's a way to drill deeper hotspots. Yeah, see these? Not really telling me where CPU is going. It's not helpful. Game loop runner run. Okay, let's check that out. Oh. Options, sources, definitions to define the directories or archives containing the sources. Okay. Okay. We're going to have a lot of source roots here. This is what everyone will have to do. Of course, if you're running an IDE, this is one of the areas where it can be beneficial because it probably, if the development environment is well integrated with the build system you are using, probably will know all this. In my case, I'm also using a ton of open source libraries that I wrote, and so I'm going to add a lot of stuff. I guess an IDE would be pulling in the sources as well. So you guys can see all my directories here. So first we'll pull in Mythruna. Is this going to be enough? Oh. You know. That's interesting. They want zips or jars. I've done this before. So for some of these, what we could actually do is go to the Maven repo. It should have sources for like all the MOS stuff. Ooh. Oh, that's right, com, some silica. Oh. Let's see if there's a better way to do this. Subdirectories. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Computer, ccolon, outmat, GitHub, Mythruna. First, let's try core, source, main, Java. Back up. Java. Select. Okay. It's going to take a while. Server, source, main, Java. Select. Okay, let's see if that helps. Oh, we don't have game loop yet. Let's go ahead and add that one as well. Yeah. So what do we do? Where do we add the... How do I get back to the... How do I get back to that screen? Options. Okay. So we're going to have to add a bunch of other stuff. Someday I'll make a source bundle. SIO2 is going to be the big one. SIO2, which SIO2, which is the main game library ties a whole bunch of SimSilica open source libraries together. SAI2 is silicon dioxide, which is, SimSilica is like simulated sand, so uses the silicon dioxide molecule as its logo. It's just all ties together. Okay, let's try this. Dum, dum, dum. Sources viewer has not been okay. I don't remember having to do that before. External viewer. Let's try registered viewer. Apply. Okay. Dum, dum, dum. Yeah, so it's just telling me, it's not showing me the source, it's just that's neat that worked, but that's not what I want to see. Let's try reverse threads. Okay, so we can see who's calling that. Why can't we see what it's doing? Okay, let's turn that off, game loop thread. Okay, so this is taking a decent amount of time here. Loop sleep, yeah. Spending all its time in sleep native. So this is not helpful either. We could take a look at source, loop sleep, and we sleep for the idle sleep time. Well, what is idle sleep time? 0. Yeah, so that's what it is, and that's also why it's hopping from CPU to CPU. We can confirm this by well, let's just make sure we're not doing something else screwy. Looked into that. It's not doing anything. That's not doing anything. Yeah, these are really the only hotspots. The database is probably doing something similar. It's waiting on a timer. Yeah. So, well, let's look at thread CPU time. Game loop threads taking all of it. And that's sort of what we confirmed over on the other side. And commented source, LOL. Where'd you see that? What are you talking about? Is there a commented source? I'm not sure what that's referring to. I mean, I typically do have a lot of commented source. I don't know if I showed any of that. This is the... it's just source comments in here. Okay, so let's see if that's really where it is. We can close the server and yeah, we stop sampling. We can remove that. Oh, yeah. Actually, it's fun. Early in my career, I did that like almost to like religious levels. Well, the other thing is to consider this is an open source project, so this is meant for other people. Let's see, there's open source license. So this is part of the open source stuff, so it does need to be documented for other people. But I do document my own code, even that I don't expect other people to see, because, and you think, when you're working by yourself, a lot of times you think, gosh, I'm the only one who's ever going to read this, and I'll know what I mean. I'm only a team of one person. I don't need to do comments. Comments are for when you've got multiple teams. The thing is, yourself a year from now, 2 years now, 3 years from now is a different person than you are today. And that different person will not understand what you're thinking today. And so a lot of times I read my own comments. I'm like, man, that dude was dumb or that dude was smart. Sometimes I really am, like, I look back at my code from 2 or 3 years ago and I'm like, man, that dude was clever. I wish I was still that clever because I'm not. And sometimes I know, like my past stuff, I was like, oh, that dude was dumb. What was he thinking? And I was glad I put the comments because I could make that. But even still, like, this is all stuff in my own code and I've put comments in. It's a good practice. Everyone should do it. Comments are cheap. Okay. Back to what we were doing. I am going to go into some silica code for a second. Oh, and I was going to tell a story. I left one job, and I stayed in touch with some of the guys who used to work there. And one day, the guys called me up. One of the guys called me up and thanked me. He said, "Yeah, dude, I'm looking through your source code. Thank you for leaving so many comments because it's clearly made what was going on clear to me and stuff like that." And so I was like, "Yeah." I took that as a life lesson, and so I try to help out the next guy as much as possible. So I think we have multiple loop strategies, as I recall. Legacy loop strategy. Oh, I already got that open. Oh, it's open over here. Let's open it where we need it. So legacy loop strategy with comments from the original or in 0 here, and we underflow constantly. Yeah. 0, and we gobble up noticeable CPU. Hey, that's exactly, see, this is the comment. This is exactly what we're doing. We are gobbling up noticeable CPU, and my comment told me that. Yeah, comments are cheap. And so, slower updates rate could probably get away with the longer sleep, but 60 FPS can't keep up on Windows. So we'll let the sleep time. So, okay, so profiling wasn't very exciting. I could set the idle time to something other than 0. What 0 means in this case, essentially we're saying, hey, if there's nothing better to do, then give up my current CPU cycle. Or basically give up, give me the next, what is it? So, threads are being shared across the processor. Each list gets a little time slice, and you can relinquish that time slice. And this is saying, when this is 0, it's saying, relinquish the time slice and come right back to me. Or don't relinquish the time slice unless there's somebody else. That's what it is. Don't relinquish the time. When it's 0, don't relinquish this time slice unless there's somebody of a higher priority waiting, essentially. So if there's nobody that if there's no other thread that needs CPU, you come right back and you'll just spin. And that's why we see the high CPU usage for this high, quote unquote, because there's nothing else going on, and so it's fine. If there was other things going on, the amount of this thread sleep 0 would take longer. And you'd see, in fact, I do see it on my other computer. I can't just, if I hit the KVM switch, it's not going to show you guys, but the other computer where I actually run the server that you guys can connect to, if I'm doing compiles or other things on there, because I also do some of my day job work over there. If I'm doing compiles, I see these messages it's talking about where it's basically there's several polling things, and when they get behind and they can't run at 60 frames a second, they log a little warning that says, hey, I couldn't run at 60 frames a second, because that might be a problem. And so other threads will take over for this, and so it's a false positive. And we found it through profiling, and you got to watch me screw around for half an hour setting up my profiler, which maybe that's educational for somebody. You can see how, if you've never done it before, I guess, and how I used it to find that particular issue, what was happening. And of course, and we learned about why comments are good, because it told me exactly, we can look up here and we can see idle sleep time is set to 0. And what do we say down here in the comment? We say, if it's set to 0, we gobble up noticeable CPU. Noticeable in this case means that basically one CPU's worth of, one core's worth of stuff is just looping over essentially the game loop. And the game loop is, yeah, while this happens, you know, sleep. Update the systems. If we've, you know, we want to refresh at 60 frames a second, so we keep track of an update rate. If enough time has passed, we run the systems, and we sleep and we loop again and again and again and again. And so this is basically returning all the time. We run through, we see, nope, it's not time to run yet, and we go through this loop again. That means we're spending all of our time in here, and we get the CPU back immediately. The core comes back immediately because there's nothing else waiting to run. And hopefully we've all learned a valuable lesson. Yep, exactly. Proof of the power of the comments. So I don't know that I have enough. So we basically solved this problem without doing anything. I don't know if I have enough time. I know for sure I do not have enough time to drill into the next topic. I thought if setting up the profiler went super quick and we pointed to it and it was an obvious thing, which it did turn out to be an obvious thing, then we would have lots of time to do it. But we spent most of the time setting up the profiler. But what I will do is explain what I'm going to do on the live stream next week, which is what I was going to do here. There's an issue with Lemur. So Lemur is the GUI library that Mythruna and a bunch of other JMonkey Engine apps use. Maybe it would be worth pulling up the Lemur page for anybody who has no idea what I'm talking about. Whoops, wrong page. So Lemur is a UI toolkit, and yeah, somewhere there's a nice picture. Maybe it's over here. You know, this is the way. This is where we're going, because you can't really see it. This is where we're headed. Mythruna, the Lemur can do stuff like that. And of course, the more typical UIs, it's obviously doing something like this. Man, I used really tiny images. This here, you know, that's like the old typical glass style. And I've done a couple other games where I used different styles. Lemur has pluggable styling and all that other garbage. It can do 3D and 2D UIs. Anyway, enough of that. One of the issues is that the only way to do labels and text and stuff is with JMonkey Engine's built-in bitmap text. And some people want to use TTF fonts. Some people want to use TTF fonts and they can't, and it's really hard to plug in. And you know, this is one of those things you think about after the fact. You know, label in here. So this is the label component, and internally, it creates a where does it create the text? Yeah, so it creates a text component. And text component is of course hard coded to use bitmap font. Well, bitmap text, which uses bitmap font and so on. And there basically some people have implemented alternative text components that use a different way to render the text that can support TTF fonts directly, like same fonts Windows uses and so on. There's just some trade-offs there. Bitmap text, pre-creates all the font glyphs, loads them into a texture. It's all ready to go. It's very straightforward from that point on. TTF, has to kind of generate the glyphs on the fly and render them into a texture, and people have solved that problem. The issue is that if they just want to create a label, new label, and put it in their UI, they cannot use their custom text component unless they heavily customize Lemur itself, fork the code. And so what I want to do is abstract the creation of this text component away so that, by default, it will create, the standard text component, but it could create a TTF text component, or maybe somebody implements something better that's not using bitmap text. Maybe they're using, distance fields or some other thing. And so the trick to that is going to be leveraging GUI globals, because there's a GUI globals that, the rest of the code uses to create materials and textures and things. And the reason it does that is because the user, when they initialize their app, they can actually give it their own GUI globals. They don't have to use my version, so they could extend GUI globals to have these methods do something different if they wanted to. Load font could do something different. In this case, I think I'll make it a pluggable factory. But basically label won't create a text component directly anymore like this. Instead of new text component, it will call GUI globals to create whatever the new text component thing is called, of which text component will implement. The other tricky part, though, that would be super straightforward, and I probably could do it in about 20 minutes if I was really lucky and avoided typos. The trickier part, though, is handling the text entry component, because it requires a little bit more access than regular text, because it needs to be able to find out where to put the cursor and to draw a cursor and all that other stuff. So I think I'll think about it this week. I will try not to actually do any work towards it so that we can all do the work together on the live stream next week. But the basic idea would be to define what the interface is going to be for, probably I'll call it text 2D, which will allow you to sort of set a font name instead of a bitmap font. It will set the font name, query things about text size, set the text, query things about text size, ask for locations of things like cursor positions, and if we were forward thinking, we might ask for things like highlight positions and things like that, but that might be a bridge too far. Anyway, we'll define that interface. We'll make text component implement that interface, which is going to require some changes because text component is currently heavy based on bitmap font and not just the font name, which I've always regretted, because it would be really nice to, styling wise, to just use the font name instead of having to load the font in the style. Anyway, that's another story. So we'll wire all that up and make GUI globals, create one of these text 2Ds, and then modify label to do that, which will automatically cover buttons and stuff, and then make text entry component use one of those text 2Ds internally. So it's a lot of work. We'll see how far we get on that, but we'll start on that next Friday. And so that we end up ending a little early tonight. I suppose what I could do with the leftover time is kind of show you guys what I've been working on a little bit with the environmental settings. So one of the things that with old Mythruna is I spent so many hours, you do not know. And I joke about the story of spending 8 hours tweaking the color of fire. That is absolutely true. I did that one night where, A/B testing between different images from different distances, because, at different times of day, the fire would look okay. But like at dusk, the fire would look a little greenish, and so I had to adjust the cover of the fire. I want to avoid that this time, because that was a lot of doing it, taking some images, changing the code, starting over. See, we got nighttime. Check it out. The lighting is not correct, but there should be. Yeah, there's the moon. It's kind of big right now. So we've got, all these things to tweak: fog color, lighting direction, light color. The stars are actually moving if we stay still. You can see the planet is rotating, in a sense. So this time, what I've done is I've created a little debug window here where I can pause time. I can run it forward or backwards by hours or by days, which is super convenient. And the other thing is that into the module system, which is used to run a lot of the game custom code, I'm building in the ability to have modules just on disk that can be reloaded whenever the file changes, and modules have groovy files, scripting files and things in them. And so I'm going to set up, I've already built the scheduler to be able to say, at this time of day, I want, at noon, I want the sun directly overhead. At dusk, I want the sun at the horizon, and it'll interpolate between those for each of the different times of day. And then And so that all the different settings for that, the lighting direction, the lighting intensity, bloom intensity, you can sort of connect all those things to that schedule, even phases of the moon to different days of the month. There's different kinds of frequencies and things. And I'll script all that and make it automatically reloadable so that I could run the game in a window like this, edit the script over here, and see the live updates as I tweak things. I was originally going to have it be one of those cases where, I want to tweak the color of the sky in the east and be able to like click a thing and bring up a little color chooser in the game. And it occurred to me I estimated it would take me about 2 or 3 days to implement all the different hooks and things to be able to tweak the values between the angles of the phase of the moon and different things, to have those settings wired in such a way that I could pop up a little UI and edit them. And then it occurred to me that I already have scripting built in, I already have mods built in. If I just make it reloadable, I can just edit the things directly in my text editor. I'll have way more control. I'll be able to cut and paste different values across different times, and ultimately it's better, even though it's not as pretty. And I'll have to guess on the colors a little bit or pull up a separate color palette, which my editor already has, a color palette. So ultimately it'll be better, and in the long term be better for all kinds of things, because I could tweak object scripts and see them run in real time and things like that. So that's what I'll be doing this weekend, is finishing wiring up that so I can start setting up all of these settings so that we can get the times of day hooked to things and make dark actually dark, moonlight actually pointing in the right direction. So you can see the sun hasn't even come up yet, and we're already seeing the sun over here. We should be having light coming from the other direction, but the sun is always shining, even when it's through the planet. But we got stars, which I was kind of happy to see. If I get time, I might put clouds in. I think clouds is a big topic, but I wanted to put day-night in because the next release I'm trying to make for the Halloween release, and I wanted to have like some potentially spooky Halloween content. You got to be able to have dark and hopefully some sounds, and maybe if I can get a critter or two running around, that would be kind of cool. What was I going to do? Oh yeah, I was going to run forward to the run forward to the sunrise. We can watch the sunrise together. And of course the skybox will change. This is the actually properly calculated atmospheric skyline, skybox, which uses math to calculate it based on atmospheric equations and so on and so forth, but not very artistic. I miss the old Mythruna sky where you had the cool purples and oranges at different times of day, and I could tweak those colors as much as I wanted. And so this is supposed to be physically accurate, but I don't know, I preferred the artistic control I had over the old. Anyway, so that's it. I don't think I've got anything else to talk about tonight. Again, not enough time to do the Lemur stuff, unfortunately. We'll do that next week. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'll leave the thing open for a second while I run around, and if somebody has something they want to say, ask a question. Otherwise, I hope you all have a very productive week and weekend. If you're working on your game, post some screenshots somewhere. I'd like to see it. I will certainly be posting screenshots as I get more of the sky stuff working. So many cool ideas to get done in so little time. Anyway. Alright, thanks for joining, and I will see you guys online. Thanks for watching. I suppose I can close VisualVM too, hey? And let's bring up the stream and officially say good night.